Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Korman Productions, here to do another rewatch video of Quantum Leap Season 2, Episode 14, titled All American. The episode's description reads as follows. Sam must prevent a fellow high school football player from throwing the championship game and losing his scholarship. The episode was directed by John Cullum, and if that name sounds familiar to you, it should, because he was John O'Malley in Catch a Falling Star from a couple episodes ago. Something that I completely missed when I looked at his Internet Movie Database page when I was talking about that episode. This is his one and only directorial credit. The episode was written by Donald P. Belzerio and Paul Brown, who we have talked about before. He was responsible for my favorite first season episode in Kamikaze Kid. He also wrote Disco Inferno, and once again, Catch a Falling Star, and he has a couple more writing credits for this season. The episode takes place on November 6th, 1962, and originally aired on January 17th, 1990. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple things. One, this is not a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend that you go check it out before coming back to me. Secondly, if you like this video and want to support the channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. Now, this being the last of these videos that I will probably be doing for the year, I would like to thank all the people that have watched my videos and regularly comment. I literally could not do this without you guys. As far as this episode goes, it lands pretty firmly in okay territory. Fun fact, I did not originally watch this episode when I was a kid. I only watched it when the DVDs originally came out sometime in the 20s. In my 20s, rather, not in the 20s. I like the intention and what they were trying to do here, but I find the episode very slight for the most part, with a couple of really good scenes. And it suffers a little bit from what I would term first season pacing problems. It very much resembles a first season episode. This is the first intro that has Deborah Pratt's voice, but it's still not quite the intro that will be the one that we will see for the rest of the series. Sam leaps in, and he's on the football field. He gets hiked the ball. A bunch of defensive players, run at him. He basically tosses the ball in the air. Someone catches it, and then runs downfield. Al appears in the teaser, which is exceedingly rare, at the 1 minute and 26 minute mark. And oh, by the way, I don't get what's going on in this teaser. Sam tosses the ball in the air accidentally, player catches it, runs down the field, and then another player tosses it back to him. Why? That doesn't make any sense in football terms. So the running back seemingly, or whoever had the ball, it might have been a wide receiver for all I know, has gained a whole bunch of yards and decided to cough them all up by throwing it back to the quarterback for some reason. When we come back, Sam throws an ugly pass to his best friend, who ends up in the end zone for the win. Sam ends up asking Al, hey, was that what I was here to do? And Al says, yep, get ready to leap. Only he doesn't leap, because if he did so, the episode would be over, and we just started this thing. One of his teammates comes over to him to celebrate the win by doing a Go Jaguars chant, and then punching both of his arms down into the shoulders of Sam Beckett, which causes him to fall over. After, the entire team celebrates in the locker room, and we have a brief conversation between best friends, Sam and Chewie, played by Richard Coca. Now, Al's Place actually mentions the fact that Sam and Richard Coca would eventually reunite for the movie The Lumineers. Also in that movie is Pepe Cerna, who is in this episode as well. He plays Sam's father in this one. Richard Coca, in addition to that, was also in the Mexican Minority Report and The Truth About Cats and Dogs. We cut to what seems to be a celebration of the team's victory. We see Sam's father, played once again by Pepe Cerna, who's running a food truck, which he seems to own, and he has designs on eventually owning his own restaurant. We soon meet Chewie's mom, just as he starts talking about trying to get with girls while doing medical school and all that jazz. There is some very clear interest between Chewie's mom and Sam's dad. that is very evident early on. There is more talk about scouts being in the stands and about the championship game that they are going to play in coming soon. Al appears, and Sam makes a lame excuse to exit the scene. And it turns out that Al didn't really go anywhere. He just went and checked out the cheerleaders, which is on brand for Al, of course. Al eventually reveals that Vega got a scholarship, but Chewie, on the other hand, not so much. For whatever reason, Chewie ends up throwing the game, which doesn't compute with Sam, because Chewie seems very intent on winning the championship. And while we're learning this information, we're seeing the kids dance and partying, mostly to what sounds like 50s and 60s music, including the twists. Sadly, we don't get another Chubby Checker cameo. Later, we see Sam sitting by himself, pondering, when his friend Chewie joins him. Clearly, something is bothering him, but Sam won't say. Eventually, he reveals his fears that they're going to lose the championship game. And I think that this entire scene is to try to draw out Chewie to maybe figure out why he's going to throw the game, because they really don't have any clue why he did it. That's information that is locked in the human heart. Well, okay, Al, but just last week, you could tell me when and why somebody lost their virginity. But this week, you can't tell me why someone throws a game? Alright, Al, if you say so. Chewie right now seems pretty ready to punch Sam in the face for suggesting that they are going to lose the championship, because he's absolutely convinced that they are going to, which befuddles Sam, because he's expressing this much confidence about the possibility of winning. So why does he ultimately end up throwing the game? We see Sam's father and Chewie's mother talking about the restaurant, which he intends to buy from a person who recently died. Chewie's mom doesn't seem too thrilled about this idea and argues against it, and eventually takes off to get some tartaletas, which apparently is a Mexican dessert. We have another scene with Al and Sam, whose mind is blown by the fact that Sam thinks Al took until he was 16 to lose his virginity. Something that Sam really should have known better about. In fact, Al was in the cloakroom with Susie at the age of 12. Sam remains unconvinced that Chewie is going to throw the game, but Al keeps insisting that he's going to, and it's his job to figure out why. Chewie's mom is in the kitchen getting the tartaletas when Ruben, her landlord, stops by. She doesn't seem pleased to see him and asks, "What are you doing in my house?" Asks this question in Spanish, and Ruben points out that it is not really her house, it's his house, and she seems to be getting confused by the terms, such as what it means to rent. When you rent, you're paying for the use of, and for the last 3 months, she hasn't been paying her rent. Ruben is played by Fausto Berra, and he died on February 19th, 1994, at the age of 42, which is really, really young. He has 16 acting appearances, including L.A. Law, Kojak, The Price of Justice, and American Tail, 5 Goes West. Ruben's intentions are made pretty damn clear, that he will forgive the rent if she will sleep with him, something that she does not seem particularly thrilled to do. She tries to get out of it, saying she'll write a check. Oh, but he knows that check is no good. So instead he says, "Hey, get the money by this day, or you're out on your butt." Charming fellow, that one. Chewie and Sam end up on the scene, and Ruben goes back from threatening to charming and says, "Hey Chewie, if you happen to know of any injuries, please let me know." And Sam is like, hey, wait a second here. We can get into trouble for giving a gambler tips about the team. You don't say, Sam. Sam ends up picking up on the vibes and goes after Ruben. And Bakula's delivery in this scene is just kind of weird. He says to Ruben, in this almost questioning tone, that he thinks that Ruben is the reason why he's there, and to stay away from Chewie and his mother. But he doesn't deliver those lines with any kind of threat. I'm not sure if this is an actor choice or a directorial choice. Either way, it doesn't work. And Sam threatening the landlord to stay away from Chewie and his mother is not going to work, for the simple reason that he is currently the landlord of these two. Practice the next day. Al is hanging out with the cheerleaders, because of course he is. Sam is trying to learn the plays from reading the playbook, and Al simply tells him, "Hey, The play is throw the ball to Chewie, score touchdowns. Sounds pretty simple to me. Chewie comes over and tells him that the coach wants him to lead calisthenics and to do it right, or he's going to be running laps. Sam ends up putting la 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 Bombay to lead calisthenics, and the coach is not amused. So guess what? He ends up running laps. Since Sam had absolutely no idea what he was doing, this result was pretty much inevitable. While Sam is walking his laps, I mean, you could barely even say that this is jogging. He is literally just walking. He's talking to Al and asking about Ruben. Ruben is apparently a slumlord who rents out a bunch of small apartments to people who can't complain at exorbitant rates. And Sam surmises that he's renting them to illegal aliens. And he's a big-time gambler. Well, that should be setting off light bulbs in everybody's heads. He only gambles on high school basketball and football games, which Sam realizes it's because he can fix those games. And Sam, or rather Ruben, ends up paying Chewie to throw the game. Sam remains unconvinced that Chewie would ever do that. The coach spots Sam talking to himself, and because Sam is acting like a clown, he gets the pleasure of walking more laps, because that's all Sam is doing here, walking. Chewie ends up alone in the locker room later on when Ruben appears and is his usual slimy, charming self, or what might pass as charm for a slumlord, of course. He slyly eventually ends up telling Chewie that his mother owes him a lot of money. Chewie ends up asking for time to make up the money. And oh hey, it's funny you should ask about that, because I have just the idea that might help out the situation. If you throw this football game, your debt is forgiven. In fact, you can stay there for free for a couple more months. Sam has finally finished walking his laps, which I think had to be like 100 laps or something along those lines. I lost count, honestly. He stumbles into the locker room and happens upon Ruben and Chewie. And Sam, once again completely non-threatening, says, I thought I told you to stay away from him. And once again, I'm not thrilled with Bakula's delivery here. It isn't long before Sam and Ruben are physically fighting each other, knocking over lockers, and that's when the coach comes in to break up the fight. The coach, by the way, is played by Robert Benedetti. He has 29 acting credits, including Miss Evers' Boys, On Promised Land, and one episode of Civil Wars. In addition to that, he's also a writer of The Canterville Ghosts in 1996 and Mercy Mission, The Rescue of Flight 771. And lastly, he's also has 10 producing credits, including some of the ones I've already mentioned, as well as Pontiac Moon as an executive producer, and A Lesson Before Dying. The coach, whose performance I rather enjoy in this episode, wants to know what the heck is going on. And Chewie ends up saying that Sam and Ruben are fighting over the same girl. What? Is that the best excuse that you could come up with for this? You didn't think that might end up raising some troubling questions, given that Sam is a high school student and Ruben is very much not? The coach ends up asking, you're a little old to be chasing high school girls. Or Vega, do you happen to like older women? He doesn't pursue this line of questioning any further because I suspect he knows that this is bullshit. But he ends up banning Ruben from the locker room. And he ends up chewing out both Chewie and Sam in a very much deserved fashion, saying if anything like that happens again, they will both be off the team. Left alone, Sam says to Chewie, you can't do it. And Chewie says, I don't know what you're talking about. And Sam gets physical and says, damn it, Chewie, I know what you're going to do. And Chewie says, well then don't throw the ball to me. Right here is the best scene of the episode. And this is where the episode really takes off and gets really good. Of course, at this point, we only have like 15 minutes left of the episode. We cut to the championship game where Sam and Chewie end up exchanging looks. Chewie ends up catching a pass, but then suddenly has an injury and cannot continue. From there, the game does not go well. We have a montage of missed opportunities and missed plays, and before they know it, the game is 14-9 with them down in the championship game. Al shows up, and Sam dejectedly asks, and where have you been? And apparently, Al is watching Super Bowl 30, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are down. Speaking of which, Super Bowl 30 was played on January 28th, 1996, so that puts the future timeline in 1996, which bears fruit, or rather evidence, for the fact that I was actually wrong about the series timeline. That when we originally started, we were in 1995, and that the series ends around 1999. Someone made that comment in the Genesis video that I did quite some time ago now. But even weirder than that is that Super Bowl 30 featured the Dallas Cowboys and the Steelers, who lost the game 27-17. So this episode actually predicted the future because they mentioned the Steelers being down. They don't mention Dallas or who the other team is, but they mention Pittsburgh Steelers specifically. But anyway, Sam is pretty much convinced that he lost this one, that he failed during his sleep, that there's only 23 seconds left of the game. And that doesn't really, there's no evidence borne out by the episode that there's only 23 seconds in the game. There ends up seeming to be quite a bit longer than that. But that's kind of a problem with sports movies in general, and not just this episode. Sam ends up asking, "What do you want me to do?" And Al suggests, "Quit." My God, that's so crazy, it might just work. Sam looks at Chewie and asks, "Are they really that close that this will work?" And Al says, "Yep, they're really that close, like you and me." And so Sam does what Al tells him to do. He quits, and he doesn't really give a good reason for that. He just says that he can't play. And his coach is not pleased because he's been waiting a long time for a championship game. He ends up leaving Vega, and Chewie comes over and says, "Hey, you can't quit now. If you quit now, you'll never get the scholarship." You got the idea, Chewie. So are you going to let him throw his future down the toilet? And of course the answer is no. Chewie agrees to enter the game, but tells Sam not to throw him the ball. Both Chewie and Sam re-enter the game, much to the coach's relief. They enter the game. Sam ends up throwing a long pass to Chewie that he doesn't manage to catch because it's out of Chewie's reach. And the game time has expired. Oh, but wait! There's a flag on the play. Pass interference. The coach calls for a full back blast, which for those of you who are unfamiliar with football is a running play. The ball is hiked. The fullback is seemingly stuffed at the line, but Sam never gave him the ball. He still has it in his possession. He throws to Chewie, who catches the ball. And what do you know? They have won the game. We cut to a celebration, and Sam ends up asking, "Why haven't I leaped?" Well, that's because the problems for this episode have not yet concluded, as we see Ruben drive up, ready to kick out Chewie and his mom. Sam ends up instructing the movers to move everything into their lawn and suggests that Chewie can stay in his room while Chewie's mom can sleep with his dad in a uncharacteristic, I should say, lack of tact, which Chewie ends up calling him out on, saying, "Hey, you can't talk to my mother like that." And Sam replies, "Well, I can if she is also my mom." Well, no, Sam, that would still be pretty weird. Anyway, Sam's dad really likes this idea and says that it would solve all of Chewie's mom's problems. But she wouldn't marry him for that. She would marry him because she actually does love him. And everybody is happy, except for Ruben, of course. But we don't really give a crap about Ruben, now do we? He suggests that, "Oh, you're not going to be very happy after I call immigration," which Chewie ends up reacting to, saying, "Hey, after our parents are married, it's not going to be a problem anymore." Okay, I'm not totally sure how this works. Like, it seems to me in order for this to resolve the problem, they're going to have to get married pronto. Otherwise, they are going to have problems with immigration. But then again, I'm very unfamiliar with immigration laws now, never mind in the 1960s, so I could be wrong. Chewie's mom ends up suggesting that instead of buying the restaurant from the dead man, he buy more trucks, and this turns out to be a $1 million idea. So hey, all around good job here, Sam. You can leave now, but not before doing the Jaguar celebration on Ruben as a form of revenge before leaping. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. It has some really good moments, but all in all, it feels kind of lightweight and like not really much happens in this episode. There's a lot of meandering about before we actually get to the main problem and conflict of this episode. The next time we meet to talk about an episode will be Season 2, Episode 15, Her Charm, which I remember being pretty a decent episode. I'm not sure when I'm getting to this one exactly. The new season of This Is Us starts January 4th, so I will be fulfilling my commitment to do the final season of This Is Us. I'm basically going to try to mix in both This Is Us videos as well as still doing these Quantum Leap videos. We'll see how that goes. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can join my Korman Productions Facebook page. You can buy me a copy, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. You can buy something from the Korman Productions store on Zazzle. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Korman Productions, signing off.